We're working through this section. Not sure if you had a chance to do these last two examples here, but I want to really quickly write out a solution for you. You can either compare to yours, or if you don't have anything down, maybe you could write something down. You're presented with information in a variety of forms here, maybe. So you're talking about a line that's parallel to this, and it passes through this point. I think it's a good idea to kind of write down the information. You have a point, 1, -6. Do you have the slope? You're not directly given the slope, but you could get the slope, right? How could you find the slope? If you're looking for a line that's parallel to this, how can you figure out the slope? If you had a graph of this, you could figure out the slope. Or if you just put this into slope-intercept form, right? To find the slope of that, okay, rewrite this in slope-intercept form. Right? And the reason is then you can tell what the slope is, right? If you want to rewrite that in slope-intercept form, it's quite easy because the y doesn't even have a coefficient in front of it. So if I'm going to rewrite that in slope-intercept form, let's move that over there. Because then I can change this here. If you move this to the other side, so you got y equals, and you're left with 2x plus 4. That's in slope-intercept form. You don't even have to divide. So what's the slope? Slope is that number in front of the x, right? So if you know that the slope is 2, and now you're trying to write it in, you're trying to write the equation of this line, you have two choices here. You can use point-slope form. That's the easiest thing to do. Or you can use slope-intercept form. We'll quickly do both of those here. Point-slope form is the y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. Slope-intercept form was the y equals mx plus b form. Okay? If you're using point-slope form, you need to put in the point, and you need to put in the slope, right? There's the point. Here's the slope. So fill in the slope there. You have 2. And then your specific point is these two coordinates here, right? x1, y1. So you've got -1 there. X minus 1. And you've got this -6 over here. Y minus -6. Okay, and then write it without the double negative there. Y plus 6 equals 2. X minus 1. That's okay to leave it like that. If you're going to use slope-intercept form, you still are going to put the slope in, but you're going to use the point a different way. And I don't want this to be confusing, but this is the unknown, right? The y-intercept. If you want to find the y-intercept, what you can do is temporarily use this point for x and y. Okay? Temporarily use it for x and y here. Okay, temporarily use 1, -6 for x, y. And that allows you to solve for b. Okay, so that's the way you can use slope-intercept form, is if you put the point in for this. So if you put -6 here and 1 here, and then you sub your slope in, the only thing that's unknown there is this, is b, right? You're going to solve for that. Solve for the y-intercept. If you're isolating that, -6 equals 2 plus b. b is -8. So then you only temporarily use this for x and y, right? So now you're going to go back to this here. 2x plus -8, right? Sub that in for the y-intercept. Now that you know it, you can put it in. So the simplest way to write it is y equals 2x minus 8. Now that doesn't look the same, right? Don't get worried that these aren't the same. They are the same. If you were to multiply out the brackets here, you'd get the same thing, right? You can show that those are the same. If you really want to, you can show those are the same this way. If you take this, if you're trying to put it in general form, the simplest one to put in general form is this, but let's pretend we didn't have that. We're going to do this one. This y plus 6 equals 2x minus 1. If you multiply that out, that times that, you've got 2x minus 2, right? If you multiply that out. If you put everything on the same side, so I'm going to put all this stuff on the other side. All right, actually, first of all, let's do one thing at a time. Let's put the 6 on the other side so we can see what it's equal to. 2x minus 2 minus 6, y equals 2x minus 8. See how that matches the other side? So it is the same. Not sure if you believed or not that it was the same before, but it is the same. If you wanted it to be in general form, you also have to put the y on the other side, minus y. And then all you'd be left with on this side is 0. 0 equals 2x. Normally you put the y term next, and you put just the constant term last, so that's what it is in general form. Or of course you could have taken this one, made it general form just by moving the y over, right? 0, 2x, minus y, minus 8. Use technology to verify your answer. What you could do is graph it, right? You can take a graphing calculator and check. Right? If you have a graphing calculator in front of you, why not check it, right? If you're going to graph the thing, just graph, put the function in. I know that maybe at first when we were using graphing calculators, it was difficult, but hopefully we're getting better at this now. If you just set up the window using, say, this one, Zoom Standard. Okay, it's got all those little grid points there, but we want to check that the slope is 2. Well, I don't know, you could check a couple points, but if we're checking that it passes through, I think the key is to check that it passes through that 1, negative 6. If you want to check that it passes through there, just put in the value here. If I put in 1, it should give me the value negative 6, right? I'm probably right if I've got that point on that line. Slope is 2, passes through that point. Okay, if you want to check that. That's a way of checking your answer quickly. If you create the graph with the calculator, you should be able to check your answer with these things, right? All right. Okay, second question here. Well, there's the your turn. You can do that in a second. Second question here, I already scribbled all over it for you, but if you have or haven't tried this, maybe if you have, you can check your answer. So this is one where it's involving a perpendicular line. The previous one involved a parallel line. So again, you're presented with some information. It says, write the equation of a line that is perpendicular to this. Perpendicular to that. Perpendicular to that means the slope is the negative reciprocal of that. And it says it has an x-intercept of 9. To write the equation, you more or less need the slope and a point, or if you had 2 points. We need to figure out the slope. Okay, so it's perpendicular to this. So first of all, we need to write this in a form we can see what the slope is, right? 3x plus 2y. I'm going to put the 6 on the other side. I'm going to put the 3x on the other side. And divide by 2, you get negative 3 divided by 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3, right? If you divide both sides if you divide everything by 2 here. So what's the slope? What's the slope? That one, right? Negative 3 over 2. My negative sign has become part of it, but there's negative 3 over 2. So we got slope is negative 3 over 2. And then we need a point, right? Do we have a point? It doesn't seem like you have a point given in the question, but you do, right? If it says the x-intercept is 9, you know that when x is 9, what's y? Think about a grid here. Let's draw a little tiny grid. That's too tiny. Let's try again. If you know that the x-intercept is 9, it's on the axis. So the coordinates of that have to be 9. What's the y-coordinate have to be if it's the intercept? It has to be 0, right? So you do know a point, right? If you know that if you know the x-intercept, you also know a point. Okay, so you can use that. The key is knowing that that's 0, right? If it's the x-intercept, you know that thing is 0. So So you do know a point, and then it's the same as the other thing, right? Except for one thing here. The slope of, I should make this clear here. We want to find the slope before I highlight what the slope is, because I don't want to mislead you here. Maybe I shouldn't highlight that, because that's actually not the slope we're going to use, right? The slope of that line, of this one, what should I call it? How about if I use letters and saying this line and that line? Let's call this one L1. L1. And the one we're looking for, I'm going to call L2. Slope of L1 equals negative 3 over 2. Therefore, slope of the one we're looking for is, how do you find the slope? If it's perpendicular, instead of 3 over 2, it's going to be 2 over 3. And since this one's negative, the one we're looking for is positive. Okay, it's the negative reciprocal. So that's the slope you're going to use in the what we're finding here, right? So we have the slope and we have a point. Okay, slope and a point. So then just sub the things in. You can use either point slope or slope intercept. There was the two methods up above. You can decide which method you gravitate more towards. Okay, if you're using point slope, I think that's probably easier to set up to start with. Put the point in there and put the slope in there, and you're home free. Y minus 0 equals 2/3 x minus 9. Right, there's your two coordinates and your slope. If you multiply that out, this is easy on this side, it's just a y, right? You don't have minus 0, it doesn't need to be there. This is 2/3 times x, and it's 2/3 times 9. Sometimes that slows people down. 2/3 times x is easy, it's 2/3 x, but 2/3 times 9, if you don't trust yourself, go to your calculator. 2/3 times 9, just punch it in. Okay? 2/3 times 9 is 2. You can either do it this way. You can put 2 divided by 3 times 9. Or you can just say, if I'm timesing 2/3, times 2 divided by 3, right? Timesing 2/3 is that. Or you can just think in your head, 2/3 of 9. 2/3 of 9 is 6, right? There's your equation. If you're uncomfortable with being half black and half blue here, there we go, I fixed it for you. The pen color. Okay, so that's the equation. If you wanted to do it the other way by subbing in points, you could sub in, like you could use slope-intercept form, right? The other way you could do it is, if you're doing it this way, mx plus b, right? You can sub in the slope, is 2/3. You can put the point in that you have. You can say I have 9 for this, 0 for this. You're basically going to do the same calculation. So you're going to say 0 equals 2/3 of 9 is 6. So you're going to say b is negative 6. And then you're going to sub it in, right? You're going to say mx plus b. I know my slope is 2/3. I know my y-intercept is 6. Either way you do it, you get the same thing. So make sure you can do it one way or the other. Okay? I'm not sure how far you got with this section, doing the your turn questions and doing the assignment here. Okay? Some of the last questions are extensions. You don't have to do that unless you're aiming for a high mark in this course.